Does West Virginia have the worst roster in all of the Big 12 going into the 2023 season? Well, according to Athlon Sports, they do. What do I think about that? Let's discuss it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up this shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are talking about West Virginia Mountaineer football, the 2023 roster, and I'm going to give you my reaction to Athlon Sports' preview of the West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, I first found out about this through the Voice of Morgantown on his Twitter account. He posted a snippet of the Athlon Sports preview of West Virginia, and it says, "This might be the worst roster in the league. They have some talent, but they're not physical at all. They're really small, especially compared to the old WVU teams. The defense is legitimately bad. They look like a MAC team compared to the rest of the league." And Neal Brown, didn't fire his coaches. Now, it went on to say more, but that was the scathing part of the write-up. Now, Voice of Morgantown is agreeing with this for the most part, but I'm going to give you my opinion, what I think, whether I think this is actually a true statement or not. First, you hear this might be the worst roster in the league. Now, that I haven't broke each roster down of each team in the Big 12, so it's hard for me to comment on that. I don't think that's the case. But like I said, I haven't broken the rosters down, and let's be honest, we haven't seen them play a game yet. So on paper, maybe they do have the worst roster. I don't know. But when you look at the next statement, they have some talent, but they're not physical at all. Now, how can you say they're not physical? Let's go back to last year when West Virginia only finished 5-7, okay, overall, and only won 3 games in the Big 12. The only games they played in that they were not in, got blown out in, were Texas, Texas Tech, and Iowa State. If you want to say they weren't physical in those 3 games, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I mean, heck, they could have beaten TCU last year, the team who ended up beating Michigan in the college football playoff. Okay, they had to be physical to stay in the game with TCU. They played Pitt to open the season. They could have beaten Pitt. Had Neal Brown went for it on 4th and 1 and gotten it, it could have closed out the game. They could have burned the clock out. West Virginia likely would have won that game. You want to tell me Pitt wasn't a physical football team? They put several guys in the NFL this year in the draft. They had one of the best defensive fronts in the country last year. And West Virginia played them one-on-one, mano-a-mano, toe-to-toe, all the way down to the wire. Okay? They beat Oklahoma. You want to tell me Oklahoma's not a physical team, that Brent Venables doesn't coach physical football? Now, Oklahoma was down last year. I get that. But they won. They won the game. They beat Oklahoma State, who's always a physical team. They competed against Kansas State. That was a close game up until the latter minutes of the game. Kansas State won the Big 12 last year. You going to say they're not a physical team? They actually played with Texas in the second half, but they just came out, had a really slow start, and played really bad football the first half, and they couldn't dig out of that hole. But they actually played pretty close with Texas in the second half of that game last year. So I don't believe at all that they're not physical. I just don't buy that. In the next sentence, it says they're really small, especially compared to the old WVU teams. Now, I haven't went back and looked at the size of all the WVU teams in the past, but here's what I did do. I looked at the 2 positions where size mattered the most, offensive and defensive lines, throughout the entire Big 12. I broke down every depth chart, at least as of today, June 2nd, 2023, the preseason depth chart of each Big 12 team, and looked at the size of the offensive and defensive lines and compared them. And here's what it looks like. Let's look at the offensive line first. West Virginia's average size across the offensive line is 316 pounds. You know what the average is in the Big 12? 312 pounds. They have the second biggest offensive line, or tied for second biggest offensive line in the conference, behind only TCU, who's at 325. They're tied with Oklahoma and Texas, who are also an average of 316 across the front. So the numbers don't bear that out. Now you look at the defensive line, same story basically. West Virginia averages 295 pounds across the defensive line. Average in the Big 12 is 288. So once again, West Virginia exceeds the average. Highest 2 in the league are Cincinnati at 303 and Texas Tech at 300. Could not believe Cincinnati was the biggest. Texas Tech was at 300. West Virginia's at 295. TCU's at 295 and Iowa State's at 295. So they're tied for the third biggest defensive line in the league. Now, if you want to look at some other positions like skill positions, like wide receiver and defensive back, now West Virginia does not have a lot of length at defensive back. Most of their guys are around 5'11", 6 foot. They have a couple guys over the 6 foot mark. So some of the other teams have some taller DBs, but not by that much. Some of the other teams have some taller receivers, but not by that much. We have a big running back in C.J. Donaldson. Now, Garrett Green is not big at quarterback. Nico's a big guy at quarterback. But there again, size doesn't always matter as much at those positions, especially when you're a running QB like Garrett is and have his athleticism. So, but when you look at the positions where size matters the most up front, West Virginia stacks up and is actually in the top half or top third, if you want to say, of the conference in size. So you can't tell me they're small. That's an absolutely false statement. It shows me that the guy who wrote this review probably has no clue what he's even talking about. Okay. Let's look at the next sentence. The defense is legitimately bad. Okay, if you want to say that about 2022, that's absolutely accurate. But most of those guys now have earned more experience at the Power 5 level, and a lot of those guys are coming back. Sean Martin has another year of experience. Lee Koba now has another year of experience at the Power 5 level. Aubrey Burks, according to Pro Football Focus, second best safety returning in all the country. Now, we did bring in some transfers from smaller schools, which Voice of Morgantown touched on as a reply to this. I get that. But I believe, based on watching their film, that the guys we brought in this year are going to be better than the guys we brought in last year. Now, I could be totally wrong on that, but I believe down deep that the guys are more talented. Now, is West Virginia's defense going to be elite? I don't think so. But I definitely think they'll be better than last year, and I think they'll at least be a top 50 defense. Jordan Leslie has shown he can coach defense. 2019, West Virginia had a good defense. 2020, the first year Jordan Leslie was defensive coordinator, he was co-DC along with Jamal Adai. West Virginia was a top 5 defense in the country. 2021, West Virginia's defense was above average. Now, 2022, they took a step back. I agree. Maybe a couple steps back. They lost a lot of guys to the portal. Then they lost Charles Woods to injury for the season or most of the season. That really, really impacted that defense. But a lot of those guys that were thrown to the wolves last year are back with another year of experience, and I really think they'll be a lot better. It goes on to say they look like a MAC team compared to the rest of the league. Like I said, I haven't looked at the other rosters, haven't broken them down in detail yet, but to say they're a MAC team is, to me, far-fetched because, like I said, last year they competed with the TCUs, the Kansas States, the 2 best teams in the league. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma State, who was a bowl team. They competed with Texas in the second half, who was a good team. They beat Baylor. Nobody's saying Baylor's not a physical team. So I just think those are actually false statements. Now, is this going to lead to more wins for West Virginia in 2023? I think it will. I think West Virginia will win at least 6 games this year, if not 7. I know that still won't be a great season by our standards, but it will be better than last year and will be a move in the right direction. And I don't see us being as bad as last year. But one thing that might hurt us is the schedule, but that still doesn't mean it's going to be a legitimately bad defense, a small team, and an unphysical team. So let me know in the comments section, Couz's Corner family, what do you think about this write-up from Athlon Sports? Do you buy it? Do you agree with Athlon Sports? Or do you agree more with my statements that West Virginia is physical? They're definitely not small, and I actually had the numbers to back that up, and that we do think their defense is going to be a lot better than last year. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Guys, if you can, please support me here on my show financially. There's several different ways you can check out my merch store by hitting one of the photos below or clicking the link in the description box. You can go to Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters, type Couz's at checkout in the comment section. Let them know you found out about me right here. You can check out the Fanatics link. You can become a member. Hit the one-time thanks heart option below for a one-time donation. You can support me absolutely free in 4 ways. Thumbs up, which is a like. Share it with your friends. Drop a comment below. And last but not least, subscribe. Help me get to 10,000 subscribers, which is my next big goal here on the channel. With that being said, I really appreciate all your support. I appreciate you tuning in to this episode. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.